When the ceiling beam crashed down and trapped 8 people, the panicked gym members called 911. But Anthony, the quiet maintenance guy they'd been ignoring for months, calmly walked over and bench pressed 1,200 pounds of steel like it was made of cardboard. Welcome to Hidden Valor. This story begins at Elite Performance Gym in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, a facility that attracted serious athletes, professional bodybuilders, and fitness enthusiasts who demanded the best equipment and environment for their training. Anthony Williams, 38 years old, had been working there as a maintenance technician for 8 months. Standing 5 feet 10, with a lean but solid build, he wore simple work clothes and moved quietly through the gym, fixing equipment, cleaning, and staying invisible while the real athletes trained. But what these muscle-bound titans didn't know was that beneath Anthony's modest exterior lay the strength of someone who had dominated the powerlifting world at its highest levels. The gym's hierarchy was clear and brutal. At the top sat Derek Morrison, 6 feet 2, and 300 pounds of intimidating mass, who held multiple state bodybuilding records. His crew included Marcus Diesel Rodriguez, a 280-pound powerhouse, and Big Jim Patterson, whose 290-pound frame commanded respect throughout the facility. "Look at maintenance man over there," Derek announced during his bench press session, nodding toward Anthony, who was quietly adjusting a cable machine. "Guy probably can't even bench press his own body weight." Marcus laughed while loading another plate. "I watched him fix the leg press yesterday. Took him 20 minutes to do what I could have done in 5. Weakest maintenance guy I've ever seen." Big Jim, always ready to escalate, decided to make things interesting. "You know what bothers me? He walks around here like he belongs with real lifters. Dude's basically gym furniture." Anthony had heard variations of these conversations for 8 months. Every day brought new mockery, new dismissals, new reminders that he didn't belong in their world of serious strength. He'd taken the job specifically to stay close to the sport he loved, while maintaining a low profile after retiring from competition. The plan had been to work quietly, help maintain the equipment that serious athletes needed, and avoid the spotlight that had defined his competitive career. But the constant disrespect was wearing on him. The breaking point came during Thursday's peak hours when Derek decided to make Anthony the day's entertainment. "Hey, maintenance guy," Derek called out loud enough for the entire gym to hear. "Anthony, right? Come over here for a second." Anthony set down his tools and approached, sensing trouble but maintaining his professional demeanor. "What can I help you with, Derek?" "We've been talking and we're curious about something," Derek said with a predatory grin. "You work around all this equipment every day, but we've never actually seen you lift. What's your bench press max?" Anthony felt every eye in the gym turning toward him. This was the moment he'd been trying to avoid. "I don't really train here, I just maintain the equipment." Marcus stepped closer with mock concern. "That's not what I asked. Simple question. What can you bench press?" "I haven't tested my max in a while," Anthony replied honestly. Big Jim sensed weakness and moved in for the kill. "Translation, probably around 135 pounds, maybe 155 if he's having a good day." The crowd of onlookers grew larger, drawn by the prospect of humiliating the maintenance worker who dared to exist in their sacred space. "Tell you what," Derek announced with theatrical generosity, "why don't you show us what you can do? We'll spot you. Start light, work your way up. Let's see what maintenance strength looks like." Anthony looked around at the faces surrounding him, men who genuinely believed they were about to witness confirmation of his weakness and their superiority. "I appreciate the offer," Anthony said calmly, "but I'm here to work, not train." "Come on," Marcus pressed. "Just one set, prove you belong in a gym with serious lifters." The challenge hung in the air like a blade. Anthony realized that declining would only make the mockery worse, while accepting might reveal more than he wanted to show. That's when it happened. A thunderous crack echoed through the gym as one of the main support beams in the ceiling suddenly gave way. The massive steel beam, weighing over 1,200 pounds, crashed down onto the central training area where 8 gym members had been working out. The impact was devastating. The beam landed across multiple pieces of equipment, creating a steel cage that trapped 8 people underneath. They were alive but completely pinned, with the massive weight pressing down on the equipment that was the only thing keeping them from being crushed. Chaos erupted instantly. People screamed, phones appeared to call 911, and panic spread through the gym like wildfire. "Nobody move," Derek shouted, trying to take control. "If that beam shifts, it could crush them." Emergency services are on the way, someone yelled from across the gym. They said it'll take at least 30 minutes to get the heavy equipment here. Anthony looked at the trapped victims. Among them were Sarah Chen, a 22-year-old college athlete, Tommy Rodriguez, a teenager who just started lifting, and several regular members who came to the gym every day to improve their health and fitness. 30 minutes was too long. The beam was already causing equipment to buckle, and the weight distribution was becoming more dangerous by the minute. Anthony made a decision that would change everything. He walked calmly toward the trapped victims, and something fundamental shifted in his demeanor. His casual work posture straightened into something more purposeful, and his eyes began calculating angles, leverage points, and the physics of what needed to happen. "What are you doing?" Derek demanded. "Stay back, you'll make it worse." Anthony ignored him and positioned himself at the optimal lifting point on the beam. The crowd watched in confusion as the maintenance worker they'd been mocking prepared to attempt something that seemed impossible. "Anthony, that beam weighs over 1,000 pounds, Marcus said with genuine concern. "You can't move that. We need to wait for professionals." Anthony looked back at the 8 terrified faces trapped underneath the steel. 30 minutes is too long. Someone's going to get seriously hurt. He positioned his hands on the beam, adjusted his stance, and took the deep breath that had preceded every record-breaking lift of his competitive career. What happened next defied everything the watching crowd thought they knew about human strength. Anthony lifted the massive steel beam, weighing 1,200 pounds of dead weight in an awkward position with no mechanical advantage, began to rise. Not slowly, not with visible strain, but with the controlled power of someone who had moved weights that heavy thousands of times before. The gym fell completely silent, except for the sound of steel sliding against concrete as Anthony elevated the beam high enough for the trapped victims to crawl to safety. "Get them out," Anthony commanded, his voice steady despite supporting over half a ton of steel. "Now." The rescue took 45 seconds. Anthony held the beam steady while 8 people crawled to freedom, then lowered it safely back to the ground with the same controlled precision he'd used to lift it. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek stared at Anthony in complete disbelief. How did you just do that?" Anthony straightened up and looked around at the faces that now showed something they'd never displayed before: genuine awe and respect. "Derek, what's the world record for raw bench press?" Anthony asked calmly. "I don't know, maybe 700 pounds? Anthony nodded. 782 pounds. I hold that record. The revelation hit the gym like a physical shockwave. Marcus stepped forward, his earlier mockery replaced by amazement. "You're saying you're a world record holder?" Anthony walked to his work locker and pulled out a photograph showing himself on a powerlifting platform, holding a massive barbell overhead while judges confirmed a world record lift. "Anthony Apex Williams," he announced, "former world champion powerlifter, current holder of multiple world records in bench press, squat, and deadlift. I competed internationally for 12 years before retiring last year." Big Jim, who had been the most vocal critic, found his voice. "Why didn't you tell us? Why let us mock you for 8 months? Anthony's expression grew more serious. "Because I wanted to see if you could respect hard work and dedication without needing to be intimidated by credentials. I wanted to know if you were mature enough to judge people by their character rather than their lifting totals." The harsh truth of his words settled over the group like a weight. Derek approached Anthony with obvious shame. "Man, I owe you an enormous apology. We all do. We were completely wrong about everything. And when it really mattered," Marcus added, "when people's lives were actually on the line, you saved them. All of them." Anthony looked around at the 8 people he'd rescued, now being checked by paramedics. Strength isn't about proving you're better than someone else. It's about being able to help when others need you most. The gym owner, James Mitchell, approached as emergency crews finished their assessment. "Anthony, what you did today was extraordinary. Would you consider taking a position as our head strength coach?" Anthony considered the offer, looking at faces that now showed genuine respect rather than dismissive mockery. "I'd be interested, but only if we establish a culture based on helping each other improve rather than tearing each other down." Derek extended his hand. "Anthony, I was completely wrong about you. Would you be willing to teach us? Really teach us?" Anthony shook his hand. "I'd be happy to. But remember, true strength isn't measured by what you can lift to impress people. It's measured by what you're willing to do when others need you." 6 months later, Elite Performance Gym had transformed into one of Atlanta's most respected training facilities under Anthony's guidance. The culture had changed from one of mockery and intimidation to one of mutual support and shared improvement. Derek, Marcus, and Big Jim became Anthony's most dedicated students, learning not just about powerlifting technique, but about the mindset required to use strength constructively rather than destructively. They installed a plaque near the entrance. Strength is not about what you can do, but what you choose to do when others need you. Anthony often reflected on that day when mockery became respect through action rather than words. He'd hidden his capabilities to test their character, but when lives were literally on the line, his true strength had emerged not for personal glory, but for the simple human duty to help those in danger. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won on competition platforms, but in moments when we choose to use our gifts, not to prove our superiority, but to ensure that everyone goes home safely. Thanks for watching Hidden Valor. If this story inspired you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that real strength is measured not by what we can lift, but by who we're willing to lift up when they need us most. Let's keep celebrating the hidden heroes who prove their worth through action, not ego.